SuperHouse, the podcast that Batman fans are raving about. Bob Kane would surely give them a solid 10 plus.
Welcome to Superhero Stuff You Should Know, brought to you by SuperHouse. This is once again the man who knows too much about Batman. This is Ben, and I'm here with...
Oh, it's your old Uncle Cruzzy. Welcome to the basement. Let's have some cookies. Oh. This is Wolfie.
And it's me, Andrew, your faithful co-host. I can't wait for this fire to rise.
So if it wasn't already obvious what we're going to cover, we have finally made it to the end of the Dark Knight trilogy. It took a little while there in the middle because we were a little occupied with quarantine-related stuff. But we're back to finish off the Dark Knight trilogy with The Dark Knight Rises. Comics versus Nolan.
You waited for it, and it's here, everybody.
Yes.
Prepare thyself.
So this is actually a very important movie in SuperHouse or Superhero Stuff You Should Know history, because this was actually the first Batman discussion.
Some would say it's the most important movie.
Yes, because it was the first Batman discussion that Andrew and I ever had, way before this podcast ever started.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you knew that, Wolfie. But we were coworkers, and that was right around the time the movie came out. And we were both anticipating it. 2012 was a hell of a superhero movie year, because it was Dark Knight Rises and The Avengers.
Oh, wow.
Doing the same
That's
thing.
right. And
So-
yeah, that's right.
I had a panic attack watching The Avengers. It was
Really?
very it was intense. The end of it, I was like... I had I went and I drank a Monster. I went right after work, and I was like, I'm kind of tired. I never drink Monsters, and I got one, and I was in there. My heart was beating out of my chest, and the ending was so intense, I had a panic attack.
Did you have a surge, too?
Oh,
Lord
Surge!
knows.
Do you remember those commercials? Don't say Surge. I'm about to wreck shit up in here. Where is it?
Dude, my brother acted like it was fucking ambrosia from the gods. Like, are you serious? It's not that good, is it?
Which one of you fucking assholes drank all of my Surge?
People still talk about Surge, man. Well, I guess
It's out there places too.
I haven't
They're
heard
like
this in a while.
small markets. Anyway.
Yeah.
Jesus. Oh man. Well, it is the Dark Knight Rises edition of this, and
Brought to you by Surge.
It's brought to you by Surge, obviously.
The
We'll have a little
Dark Knight
surge.
surges.
Type in Johnson's ballsack into the surge.com. Get your free Surge.
Surge the sack. That's the new keyword.
Oh wow.
Keyword, bro.
All right, back to
10% off.
This is definitely the most controversial Batman movie out of the trilogy.
Look,
And
I just want to say right now, if you've listened to this episode, please hashtag us with Surge the sack. We will be following.
we will be
T-shirts,
putting that,
T-shirts
yeah,
to come.
We'll be putting that in the Instagram promotion for it. Yeah, so this is not only the most controversial movie of the trilogy, but arguably it's the most relevant Batman movie of 2020. Bruce Wayne social distances himself for 8 years, grows a quarantine beard, doesn't get a haircut. The villain wears a mask that covers his mouth, shuts down a football game. People are cut off from resources. National Guard is sent in. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is like very relevant to today. So not only do we have to finish off the trilogy, but also like this is stuff that seems to be relevant themes back in 2012.
Aren't there like the cops fighting a bunch of people in the inn and the streets too? Actually?
Yeah, I mean, you literally got Joseph Gordon-Levitt for being like, "Don't shoot me" to that dude on the bridge.
Oh my god, dude, this movie's prophetic.
Guys
movie's very
dressed in all
prophetic,
black.
So this is, the movie to watch in 2020 for Batman, but it's also like one that we will continue the whole discussion of comics versus Nolan, where if you guys aren't familiar with what we've been doing here with the other movies, we basically break down parts of the movie in terms of how did it compare to the comics, and we sort of vote in terms of which do we prefer, Nolan's creative take on it or the original source material that it's based off of, give or take. So just a quick recap: Batman Begins, the movie won out by 1 point, and The Dark Knight, the comics, won out by 1 point. So we'll see what happens with The Dark Knight Rises, and at the end, we'll not only have a verdict on The Dark Knight Rises, but we'll also have an overall verdict for the entire trilogy.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Can't wait.
Nice. Don't watch these movies.
Don't watch these movies. Yeah.
They suck.
Just listen to us.
Yeah,
Ultimate
just
comic
listen
book dude here. Just saying.
Worst movie ever.
Comics rule, movies drool. No, just please stop me from talking. Right
It's different from the comic.
All right, so as usual, we're just going to do a quick deep dive into the actual influences before we go into start the movie, like we did with Begins and The Dark Knight. One of the things to bring up is the development of the movie. This was a difficult movie for Nolan and Goyer to come up with who's going to follow up Heath Ledger's Joker. And the studio had an answer, and in an alternate universe, we could have had this. David Goyer said the studio wanted it to be the Riddler, and they wanted Leonardo DiCaprio to be the Riddler.
I remember this. I do remember hearing about this a lot. Yes.
And I think it's just because DiCaprio had just been in Inception, so they're just like, well,
Yeah.
Inception already has, Ken Watanabe. It's got all these people who are alums or other people that Nolan likes working with. So, like, maybe just use this guy who's already a star. And to be fair, like, there were a lot of fans at the time who were excited for the idea of Riddler being reimagined, because with Dark Knight, we had just left off with Batman taking the blame for Harvey Dent's crimes. And so they're just like, well, what if the Riddler, the fan-written version of the third movie, was kind of just like, well, what if the Riddler was like an FBI agent who was investigating Batman and ends up getting like obsessed with hunting after him and turns into the Riddler and coming after him.
That sounds great, really.
Yeah.
Just that premise, I like it so far.
It sounds awesome, but unfortunately
Yeah.
that's not what they went with. They definitely wanted somebody who, instead of like, Goyer had talked about how Batman had matched wits with the Joker, but they wanted somebody who was like an actual, like a monster, like somebody who could be a physical threat. And according to a friend of the podcast, Andrew Farago, when he co-wrote the book, The Batman Definitive History of the Dark Knight, 80th anniversary book last year, the first villain they considered was actually Killer Croc.
Oh, man, they should have done that.
That would have been nuts. I wonder how they
been
would have
awesome.
approached that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he
But
probably...
instead, they chose me.
Yes. Prepare for
Some
Bane
skin disorder.
impressions. It would have been, yeah, I mean, in the comics, it's supposed to be a skin disorder, but then later on, it just gets more and more ridiculous, where you're just like, this is not a skin disorder. This is a full-on mutation.
Yeah.
You have sharp teeth and a tail.
I definitely would prefer like a more humanized take of it than like the Arkham games kind of go way over the top with the teeth and the size and everything.
Yeah, yeah. Like, even the one in Suicide Squad, I'm
Right.
glad they didn't go... Yeah, it's easy to remember. It's easy to forget that he was actually in that. But
Yeah.
He
it was
was in
still it's a little too much on the mutated side. I'm glad they went with practical makeup as opposed to CG, but it's
The movie
still a
was
little too much.
silly enough to kind of that could pass, but yeah, for like a Nolan film, it would have been interesting to see how they approached that. But I could see why they went elsewhere.
The best spoof on that is in Lego Batman movie, where Killer Croc like turns something on. He's like, "I did something," and then he swims off.
I hit him with a rock.
But yeah, obviously
man.
they didn't think Killer Croc would work in this grounded universe, and so they went naturally with the other more monstrous character who fits in a lot more to the Nolan world, and I can't really blame them for this, which was Bane. Now, funny enough, the actual influences on them weren't necessarily, they didn't really cite comic book influences for this. They actually cited a lot of literary and cinematic influences for this movie, which made it really interesting. And trust me, I read everything that they recommended and watched everything that they had previously viewed in preparation for this movie.
Ah, yes, A Tale of Two Cities. It was
Indeed,
the
yes.
best of times. It was the worst of times.
Blurst of times.
So the Tale of Two Cities. This is why. So here's what's interesting is that this came out right around the time of the Occupy. Remember the Occupy movement?
Oh yeah.
Occupy Wall Street in
Yes.
2012 or something. So people thought like, oh, this movie's made in reaction to the Occupy movement. Turns out this was written before that was even happening. It just kind of fell into place, which is also kind of how it weirdly parallels this year too, where it's just like, this is not something that's based off of a particular event. It's just speaks to the cycle. There's an unfortunate cycle of everything that goes on. So Tale of Two Cities sort of inspired the idea of, oh, there's going to be this big revolution, this cultural revolution, this class warfare element, and that's in a lot of their other influences. one of the main characters was also a prisoner. And then, of course, the biggest... I mean, there's a few characters who are named after characters in Tale of Two Cities, but the biggest thing is the ending where Gordon quotes Tale of Two Cities. The whole, it's a far, far better thing that I do than I ever done. It's a far, far better rest that I go to that I've never ever known, which is right out of Tale of Two Cities, when that character makes a sacrifice. So, Jonathan Nolan was once again the co-writer on this, and I'm going to have you guys do his quote on the influence of this.
Is he from England?
He's from Chicago. Yeah,
It's weird. Isn't
Chicago,
Chris Nolan? Chris Nolan is from England, but his brother is American.
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
They have completely different accents. They almost don't even seem like they're related, even just looking at them either. It's weird.
Yeah.
All right, so Jonathan Nolan, who's like Chicago born, said,
So I'm sitting there eating my Chicago dog and wondering to myself, or actually something I said, Chris and David started developing the story in... I'm turning into Peter Griffin. Chris and David started developing the story in 2008, right after the second film came out, before the recession, before Occupy Wall Street or any of that. Rather than being influenced by that, I was looking to old good books and good movies, good literature for inspiration. What I always felt like we needed to do for the third film was, for lack of a better term, go there. All of these films have threatened to turn Gotham inside out and to collapse it on itself. None of them have actually achieved that until this film. A Tale of Two Cities was, to me, one of the most harrowing portraits of a relatable, recognizable civilization that completely folded to pieces with the terrors in Paris, in France, in that period. It's hard to imagine that things can go that badly wrong. I'm Jonathan Nolan. This hot dog's good. Go Bears.
bravo.
Woo! The Bears.
Woo!
So, that was Jonathan Nolan, everybody. We got him just to say that on this podcast.
Great.
Hi,
So-
guys. See you later.
Supposedly, Jonathan Nolan's original draft for this was 400 pages long, according to Chris.
You
could
like the
explain-
long
Bloody
pages,
hell do
by
you
the
think
way?
we're doing here?
Which
Every other line was, remember the time?
But yeah, no, it was supposedly 400 pages long, which could explain why there's a lot of holes or so, as we'll explore, in the story, or things that feel like they could have been developed more.
Bane's story completely cut almost, right? Like almost entirely. They said there was so much shot in that hole. I guess we'll get to it, but I remember hearing like there was like a fucking shitload of Bane's stuff cut out.
Yeah, I've got a few things on that one. Unfortunately, that's not revealed till like the end. So you guys are just gonna have to wait until.
Did that original 400-page script become available in any way, or?
I wish it did.
Right.
I really wish it did. Yeah. So I'd be curious to see what was actually in there. But yeah, Tale of Two Cities apparently was a big influence. Also, you might remember some of these movies from film school, guys. A few older movies. So one of them is the Battle of Algiers. Supposedly was the battle sequences and the overall scale of it, according to Wally Feister, the cinematographer. Also, Sidney Lumet's corrupt cop film, not Serpico, but Prince of the City, which is like a lesser-known version of a similar story, which stars Treat Williams. It is a very similar story about police corruption, again, very relevant to today. And Treat Williams was the main character, and they actually tried to get him in the movie. But ironically, Treat Williams was already playing a cop in an NBC drama, or it was NBC or Lifetime or some other. It was short-lived, but it was called Against the Wall, and he couldn't do it. So that's when they got. I'm pretty sure it was the same role that Matthew Modine ended up playing, who was Deputy Commissioner Foley later on. But he never really said who it was, but I'm guessing that's who it was, just based off of his age and the type of actor he is. So that was one, and then some older classic movies. One of them being the Fritz Lang 20s silent classic Metropolis. Not related to the Superman's Metropolis, but this is even before that happened. I'm pretty sure that Metropolis in Superman was named after this movie.
German expressionism film. We were taught this in film school. This is like when people talk about German expressionism, it's like this is the film. It gets brought up quite a lot.
No,
and
I
there's
think
this
you're thinking
iconic.
of
Is that
you're
it's
thinking of
that's it, right?
The House of Dr. Caligari is the
Cabinet
German
of Dr.
Express.
Caligari.
Cabinet
I mean,
of
Wait,
Dr. Caligari.
isn't Metropolis German Express?
Metropolis
It
is
is, yeah. Isn't it?
Is it?
I
We
would
have
say
to.
it is.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
in like
looking
a
it up.
similar style. It's in a similar style.
Metropolis
get to the
nonetheless
bottom of
indeed
that.
urged representation as the zenith of German expressionist cinema.
The Zenith.
Oh, is it? My bad. All right.
I mean, you're right too, but this is like I think Metropolis is more well known than Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
I would say
Bad
the
Wolfie. Bad.
German expressionist trilogy is Metropolis, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and Nosferatu.
That's
Okay.
right, so yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, all three of those films super famous. And there's that one scene where the dude is like, he's moving like a big gear or something. It's like I don't know that shot you see all the time, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically another idea of big class warfare, cultural revolution type stuff in it.
I gotta watch that.
Yeah, Metropolis was.
Maybe I've never seen it all the way.
It was also It is one of those where there's a bunch of movies in film school or you just learn about where you're just like, oh, I've seen that, and then later on you rewatch and you're just like, oh, I didn't actually see this. I don't remember this at all.
I gotta tell you, I was bored out of my mind watching this shit when I was like 21 in film school. But I feel like if I watched it now as a guy that's almost 36, I'd be like, all right.
Silent movies.
I
kind of
get it
tough
now.
to stay focused on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. This movie was also an influence on Batman Returns because the look of the inventor in the movie, Rotwang, has the big silver hair that looks all crazy, and that was the look on Max Schreck in Batman Returns, who was also named after the actor Nosferatu. So German
Right.
Expressionist was like a big
Oh, yeah.
influence
Yeah.
on previous Batman movies, and so now once again in this whole cycle of different influences, now it's back.
Huh.
And then the last one was David Lean's Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah,
Again,
I've heard of
another
that,
thing
yeah.
takes place
I've never
in
seen
Major
that.
Revolution.
That was remade in the 80s too, I think.
They did a remake as well with like Keira Knightley or something. It was
Oh,
for
really?
like TV, yeah.
Yeah.
But the David Lean version is the classic one. But all of these, like Metropolis, Dr. Zhivago, Tale of Two Cities, these are all like ideas or playing around with ideas of like this big cultural revolution, and that's what they really wanted in this movie, for whatever reason. Because when you actually get to the movie, it's kind of just like we really just want revenge on Batman. I'm like,
Right.
I don't think we really needed this at all, but okay. It's a cool idea. I just felt like it was this movie this and Dark Knight. I feel like they threw in a lot of ideas and themes as much as they could, and in some ways it comes together in Dark Knight better than it does in The Dark Knight Rises, and we'll get further into that as we get deeper into the movie. But for me, this is like I watched all these movies and I read Tale of Two Cities in preparation for The Dark Knight Rises, and man,
made you even more disappointed.
made me even more disappointed. Yeah.
God
If you
damn it!
think about it, because like I spoiled myself with a Dickens novel and cinema classics, and then I go in, and then it's just like this is like junk food in comparison. But
Right.
the comics that we'll be comparing it to, though, the major influences it feels like are obviously The Dark Knight Returns, which is like an influence on every single Batman movie ever, post 80s. So obviously the whole idea of Batman coming out of retirement. So influence on Burton, Schumacher, and obviously would be for Zack Snyder. Next one would be Nightfall, which is the one where Bane breaks Batman's back. And then the next one is Cataclysm / No Man's Land, which is the whole idea of Gotham getting cut off from the mainland, which I teased in our episode with Zach Brown because that was kind of the next installment. We'll definitely do a deep dive on that, but that is probably my favorite long Batman arc ever. And we'll get into why when we get to that episode. One of the other influences was one in an episode we already covered with Zach Brown, and that was Batman Legacy, the one that dealt with Ra's al Ghul trying to spread a virus around, which obviously wasn't in The Dark Knight Rises, but was in The Dark Knight Rises was the whole idea of Bane being associated with Talia and Ra's. And so Legacy, its prequel Bane and the Demon, and its sequel Batman Bane, those are all had some sort of influence on it. And then the last one...
We covered when Bane has been associated with League of Assassins before this movie, right? We talked about that in the previous episodes?
In that episode, in the comic I just mentioned, and then the last one is one that wasn't really... It's one that fans bring up, but it wasn't one that no one's ever really acknowledged, and that's The Cult. It's a lesser known comic, but it does feature Gotham under siege, does feature Batman being psychologically broken down, and I'll go deeper into that when we get to those scenes. But those are the major comics.
Do you like that? Have you read the Cult one?
I've read the Cult. Yeah, I've read all these.
It's okay.
It's good. No,
Oh, it's good.
Is
Okay.
it reasonable? Are
It's
they
reasonable. Yeah, it's reasonable. It's okay. It's okay.
Sensible
okay.
storytelling. Not a whole lot of violence.
I would say out of my favorites, No Man's Land is probably the top one.
Yeah.
Followed by Dark Knight Returns, and then probably followed by The Cult. Nightfall is good, but it's kind of just gets more and more complicated, and half the story is following somebody who is in the Batman suit but isn't actually Batman, which is John Paul Valley.
I wanted to bring up because you said something about Bane breaking his back just a few minutes ago. So, just a quick personal thing about this movie. After my dad and I did not see, I mean, I saw it in the theater, but my dad didn't. So I go home to Atlanta. We watch it like on a Christmas break or something, and we're watching it, and the whole time he's just like, "Who's Bane? Who's Bane?" Because he's only familiar really with the classic villains.
Right. Yeah.
And then
Where's the Pharaoh?
And then he keeps saying, "Why do they keep saying the Batman?" You know, and he's like confused by that. And then, like, I'm watching him and I'm waiting to get to the part where he does the back break move because it's like iconic move, right? And awesome, they did that in the movie. My dad, it's uncanny when how he does this. He's done this with other movies too. He turns around completely to get a drink that exact second. That exact fucking second. I rewound it. I was like, we got to go back. You missed. We'll go back like 10 seconds, but it's just amazing how you do this.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So,
Does he not believe in the pause button? Like,
I mean, he only turned
he's
around
got like
for a
a
second, but it was just at that precise back break moment.
Some kind of like negative, deep, like reaction he gets to resolute in storytelling.
It's something. I don't know what it is. It was just, it's uncanny, dude. It's uncanny.
it's amazing. Okay. All right, well, let's dive into the movie, starting with the big prologue that I think we talked about in previous episodes, which was the prologue that was attached to the Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol movie, where we walked in, we're like, yeah, we're going to watch the Dark Knight Rises prologue, and then as we were watching it, we were like, this is how Bane sound. I didn't understand a goddamn word he said.
Yeah, only thing I could talk about. Oh, yeah. Terrible.
It was they re-edited the voice, or they re-ADR'd it, or they re-edited somehow before the movie. So the audio is different. It's a different cut, really, of the prologue than it is in the final film.
You got to think Tom Hardy probably recorded the entire movie with that first voice.
Yeah,
and I'm assuming he did the entire. Well, yeah, obviously he did the entire thing all over again with this voice, way, way, way after the fact. You know, by the time we're seeing a teaser in the theater, they've got a film. You know, exactly. On their hard drive. You know what I mean? On several of their hard drives. Anyway, but yeah, just like that voice was found way late in the game, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those like that and the Christian Bale Batman voice where I'm just like, you didn't realize how this might come across.
Yeah.
At all. Like it didn't really cross your mind. Nobody said you have an entire team of people on this, and nobody said, this doesn't really work right now. So, whatever the case was, we start off with a film where there's three men in the back of a van that heads to the plane that is being led by Littlefinger from Game of Thrones.
Oh yes, that's right.
The worst CIA agent in the world, because he lets on three masked men without actually checking any of them and what they look like on here.
Oh, wow,
I have this one chance to get information out of you as a CIA agent. If I took your mask off, would it hurt?
So obviously he didn't get any of his Littlefinger skills from Game of Thrones, but this character,
just wondering.
The CIA agent, just as a side tangent, he's become a YouTube meme.
Oh, really?
There are videos of like the continuation of Bill. Like he has his own name. His name is Bill Wilson in the novelization. So he's got this whole saga. Some people try to do slash fiction with him in a love story with Bane. Like it's this whole thing online. It's amazing.
Nolan Yowie.
Oh man.
They even re-edit like interviews with the actor Aidan Gillen, and he's just like, like, this is such an amazing movie to be part of. And then, like, in the background, they just have him scenes from Dark Knight Rises, even though it has nothing to, the actual interview has nothing to do with it. And he's like talking about his character and just like he's lost his kid and everything, and obvious stuff that's not part of it, but it's everybody has this love affair with that character, and it's amazing.
That's weird. I did not know that was happening.
Yeah. And then another character that we meet is Bane's second in command, called Barsad. He's played by Josh Stewart, who is the villain in Punisher Season 2. But Barsad is actually named after a villainous character in A Tale of Two Cities.
Okay.
So he's the one who tells the CIA agent, like, hey, we got Bane, we got the man in the mask, type of thing. Who, speaking of which, we meet almost immediately after. So Bane, apparently, Tom Hardy was the first, last, and only choice on Chris Nolan's list for this character. And Tom Hardy almost was not able to do it because of Mad Max Fury Road. It was only because Mad Max got delayed that he was freed up to do this.
Oh, shit.
Which is cool.
Was there any was it like based on Bronson at all, and how like menacing and
I don't know if I'll have to look this up, but
I mean, you wouldn't want to typecast the guy or anything.
You wouldn't, but I'm
see
pretty
what
sure,
he's capable of.
I gotta look this up, but I'm pretty sure Tom Hardy was like, you cast me because of Bronson, right? And then Nolan's like, I haven't seen Bronson. So
You don't like my movies?
I remember reading about how his like workout regimen. I believe Nolan, I could be wrong, but Nolan was like, we don't want him to look like Mr. Olympia. He has to look like he's been doing prison workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool.
that's, and obviously did a bunch of that for Bronson.
So they arrested him.
Yeah.
I'll look that up before the next episode, but he
Yeah.
did pack on good 30 pounds for the role.
Jeez.
But I gotta admit, when they first announced he was cast, they didn't actually say who he was playing. And
Oh, really? Wow.
everybody was like, it's got to be Bane because of Bronson. And I looked up his height, and I'm just like, this dude's shorter than Christian Bale. There's no way this is going to, like, I get, like, he's buff in Bronson, but, like, there's no way he's going to be Bane. And Bane's supposed to be Latino. And then, like, later on, they're like, he's Bane. And I'm like, never mind. I was wrong.
Isn't that so funny how short actors are? I find it
It's
hilarious.
hilarious.
Michael Keaton is really fucking short.
Yeah.
Is he really?
Yeah, a lot of people, that's
should
another reason why
like
people object to
5'6"?
casting.
He's
like supposedly 5'10".
He's like 5'8".
But, like, see, he was supposedly 5'10", but I'm sure he's actually shorter.
Yeah. And seeing the bat suit, the screen used bat suit next to people, it's pretty mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Whatever. But
Yeah, but
Schwarzenegger's only like
Tom Cruise.
5'11". Schwarzenegger's not
Yeah.
even 6
Van
feet. He
Damme.
seems huge.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously
Good watch.
huge, but
I find it hilarious.
They managed to make Hardy look pretty imposing, considering, because like there's other pictures of him just walking around just shirtless, and he doesn't look as impressive. But a lot of this is lighting and camera angles and everything. So he put his all into at least bulking up and looking the way they wanted him to look. But our first
no problem
competition-
there. He was
exactly.
good in the way he like the whole
Josh
like
Brolin.
hold your own jacket lapel move while he's walking is super badass.
He's got
so.
style. He's
Yeah.
a rapper for a little while. He's got flavor, man.
There is a shot of Roz doing a similar grab the lapel thing in Batman Begins.
Oh shit!
So I'm not
Sick.
sure whether or not that was a conscious decision to mimic that, or if it was just a nice coincidence that he and Liam Neeson had the same choice. But kind of shows the Roswell influence if you want to read into that.
That's cool.
I do.
And I do.
So let's talk a little bit about Bane. The first competition we have here on Comics versus Nolan is obviously they did a reinvention of the look, just like they did with Joker. In the comics, he's got this luchador type mask with like big red eyes on it, and has like this big black tank top. And in the actual design for it, costume designer Lindy Heving talked about other influences.
If you look at Bane in the comics, he's wearing a wrestling mask and a wrestling suit. We couldn't possibly do that in the kinds of films that Chris Nolan was making. I drew hundreds of drawings of that. Sitting with Chris, we ended up deciding that we were going to cover his mouth, just like I always do with Tom Hardy. I looked at the mouths of spiders and baboons when they snarl, and that's how it started to get the feeling of the metallic pipes coming down in front of his face.
Perfect.
Nice. That's a pretty good one.
So they obviously reimagined this based off of those influences, but in the comics, the mask, the back of it has these openings for the tubes to feed him the venom directly to his skull, so he can bulk up. In the movie, it's a little different. There's no venom, there's no steroid type element, but it's basically an anesthetic that he breathes in to deal with the pain.
Is that what it's supposed to be?
That's what I think so. Yeah, that's why.
That's-
They
Yeah, when
never
he asked
explain
him-
that shit.
When you ask him if it hurts, and then he's just like, it would be very painful
Oh yeah, that's true.
for you.
For you. All right, so let's go around. Comic book Bane's look versus movie Bane's look. Let's start with Wolfie.
Well, so in the comics, he's of like a Latin descent, right? Of like
Correct, and I did want you to go into
Guatemalan or some shit.
Yeah, and I did want you to get into that because they did kind of erase that as well. In this,
Yeah,
in
but
terms of
yeah,
what your
exactly.
viewpoint was on that. Yeah.
I remember I was talking to somebody and they said that he was mimicking like kind of like a Spanish gypsy kind of accent, or like the word cotillion.
I got the name of the guy. I got the name of the guy he actually based it off of.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, I really like the movie, even though the voice comes off as goofy. It's still great. I like the.
We'll
movie.
do the voice later. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the movie version of it a lot, and I never really gravitated towards the comic version of Bane.
Gotcha.
Honestly,
That's crazy. You're Latino American. This is nuts.
I don't like to
This isn't-
glorify Latino warlords.
This is an
How
up.
about
This is
some
an
Latino
upset.
heroes for once?
Oh yeah, I guess so. Turn the bad
Like-
guy white.
In Mexico, they had a character named El Gato Negro, and he was like the black cat. Okay, so need more of that. Anyway,
He was a hero. Okay.
All right.
Wow. Yeah.
Over to Andrew.
Shit. I don't know. Like, it is whitewashed, so we have to keep that in mind. But in the,
I do not like that aspect of it.
it does it doesn't really like doesn't ruin the movie or anything. But it probably would have been kind of cool if it was like a Mexican dude. I don't know.
Actually,
I mean,
I agree. I like the look of this Bane, but they should have left him
Latino.
Latinx.
like yeah, I mean, Tom Hardy did a great job with what he was given and all that stuff. Like, I don't really like hold it against him all that much, but I don't know, man. It's again like I guess I'll go with comics. Not that I don't hate it at all. It's just I'll go with comics.
All right. I'm gonna go with comics on this one myself. Not necessarily because of aesthetic. I did originally when I first saw the image. I'm just like, you know what? I do actually like this reinvention better than I like the Joker reinvention because there wasn't really anything about it that went against, what I really liked about the character. Like with the Joker, I liked the idea of him sort of looking less scary than he actually was, as opposed to being more on the nose where it's all scarred up. With Bane, I'm just like, he looks scary in the comics. He looks scary on film. It's fine. But when I got into the movie, it was like, oh, the tubes aren't venom. The tubes are anesthetic for the pain, and they're right at his mouth. And if you undo the tubes, then he's just a weakling, which you might say, like, well, that's just like Bane in the comics. I'm like, no, that's not actually, because in a majority of the comics, he's barely on venom. Venom is actually a very small part of his story in the comics, and when Azrael cut the tubes for the venom, that was like a quarter into the fight. Bane can still kick his ass. He just uses that to get the hit on the steroid, but if he doesn't have the steroid, he can still kill you. He doesn't turn into an absolute weakling, which is the problem with a lot of the different versions of Bane. So just for that alone, I got to give it to the comic book version.
Right.
Yeah.
So that one goes to the comics, it looks like.
All right.
And then we're going to continue more on other aspects of Bane, but before we go into that, Wolfie, I thought I would give you a chance to talk, because like the three of us, you're the Latino, you're Latino American, and I know that there's like, well, he's a villain in this, and is kind of the cliche luchador look, but on the other hand, they cast a British dude in this, so like, what are your views on this, and if there was another way that you would have preferred on here?
Dang, yeah. In terms of that, I guess because I never had like the biggest interest in Bane as a character, mostly because I just don't know much about him or his storylines other than the Nightfall stuff.
Yeah.
That I was just always like, I don't really care. So when the movie came out, I didn't really care either, because I was just like, oh well, Tom Hardy seems like a good sizable dude to fight Christian Bale. I didn't really even think about it in terms of like the quote unquote whitewashing angle of it. I think, in terms of that, like honestly, a good Bane would have been Danny Trejo.
That's a little too comedic, though. I think.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, he doesn't have the chops for like a Nolan picture, and I'm trying to think of who could be good. There's probably many good actors who could be.
Trejo does do the voice in Young Justice, so he does get to play Bane.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Even though he's not bulky, I always really like the idea of Javier Bardem.
Oh shit!
Oh
There
yeah.
you go. Yeah.
That voice. With
That's true.
His voice from No Country as Bane.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
He's not. He wouldn't be bulky, but he'd be. Yeah, exactly. He'd be imposing, at least in terms of height.
Yeah.
Like he would still tower over Bale. He might not be wide, but
he's tall and he's the type of guy that I think would put down that time to get that physique. That's because it's like the prison workout kind of stuff. I feel like that would have been great. And you could have still weaved in the League of Shadows somehow, but I suppose that would also lead to some convolution as to why the Spanish national is dealing with this more like European ninjas, I suppose. But
exactly.
They're gonna figure it out. In retrospect, now it would have been really cool to see somebody take the role in that way. But we have what we have, and we're still progressing.
We're on the way.
Yeah. We're on the way. But there was a lot of whitewashing in a lot of the villains because of the fact that like Ra's al Ghul was also an Irish dude, and Talia, who's supposed to be like at least half Asian in the comics, is also French. So it's like,
right.
I don't think this would ever happen again, especially this day and age. But
that's true.
Bane's voice then is the next part, which sometimes I feel I'm not sure if I should even put in here because it's not like there's voices in the comics, but I might as well put this in because there's nothing in the comics to indicate that his voice sounds
in my head. There is. Hi, I'm Bane.
The inspiration the inspiration for Bane's voice apparently came from a gypsy fighter named Bartley Gorman, who he credited in an interview with Entertainment Weekly. He liked the idea of he has the body of a very physical young man, but the voice of somebody who sounds older. And that was the reasoning behind that. But obviously he doesn't have the same type of accent as you would hear in the cartoon, because a lot of the cartoons they hired Latino American actors to do the voice. And so they
Arkham, he's also got the
Yeah,
accent, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, in all the video games. Yes.
Wait, no,
so
that's Russian.
it's gonna maybe he should have been the KG Beast, who was pretty much the same type of character.
Yeah.
But whatever the case was, it wasn't KG Beast, it was Bane, so we're just going to go with Bane. So in terms of saying comic book Bane versus movie Bane voice, let's just go with like the perception of what Bane's voice was for the comic book one. But which do you prefer, the ones that you hear in the cartoons, the video games, or this voice from? And it's terrible.
My voice here, my beautiful singing voice.
Of course, yes. Which do you prefer? We'll start with Wolfie again.
Now that we've been talking about it a little bit, I picked my last pick based on the aesthetic because I do like the way that Bane looks. But yeah, definitely, I think I prefer the Spanish or Latino voice actors for the character. And I think I'm gonna go down a little Bane hole. I'm gonna go into the Bane hole.
Bane hole.
And
wow. Okay.
Oh God, what do I say things like that?
What do you mean by the Bane hole?
Well, I'm just gonna bone up on my wait, damn it. I'm gonna learn more about.
You're gonna bone up in the Bane hole.
Bone up.
I feel like I owe him. I feel like being somewhat culturally connected to the character. I'm gonna learn more about Bane and get into him. I haven't given him a fair shake as a villain.
Straight up bone down on the Bane hole.
I'm going with the tunes.
All right.
Or comics by proxy.
Right. All right, on to Andrew.
I'm really going to base mine off of the comic one would be, for me, that first one, I guess, in the first Arkham game, because he has like the Latinx accent, right?
Yeah, because he's like,
that?
I will break you, and then the Bruja. He says there.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the thing. Like that voice is obviously like some sort of white dude voice too. So you can't really separate the race from the voice. So I don't know, man. I mean, I like Tom Hardy a lot, and the voice is hilarious. It's kind of like iconic in a bad way now. In a funny way. In a funny way.
It sticks out. There's, it creates that distinction for like a Batman's Rogues Gallery member in its own way. It's like it's goofy, but now I can't even really imagine the movie without it, or
I know.
Cannot unsee at this point.
Right, because if he didn't do that, if he didn't do that, then we wouldn't have gotten the spoof, the greatness that's in the Harley Quinn show.
Yeah, that's.
Oh yeah.
Is that my chair? So I don't know. I really like Tom Hardy's one, but I might have to just go with the other one by default. Comics by default.
And I'm gonna go with the comics too, because just the idea in my head, well, part of it is in my head, but also just in general, like, it's just not the voice that you hear in the comics, and it just always felt like a very strange, unintentionally funny voice, and to pair that with Bale's strange and unintentionally funny Batman voice in the same movie was, again, unintentionally hilarious. So with this one, I can't help but keep thinking about how it would have sounded with somebody like Javier Bardem's voice. To talk about breaking Batman and how scary and frightening that could have been if they could have made him as frightening as he was in No Country. And something like that would have been amazing, and an amazing representation of the character in the comics. So, once again, my vote's to the comics.
Nice.
Okay.
That's
All
another
right.
point
That's another
for the
one.
comics.
Let's see. Other aspects.
We can deep fake it and pull.
Oh, man.
God, if only you could deep fake voices too.
Trejo Bane.
or Bardem Bane, and you just see his eyes
Yeah.
under that mask in the movie.
I wonder if they can
difficult
do
'cause
deep fake on a
hard.
mask.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
character wearing a mask.
Yeah. You would have to do that in the voice, yeah.
you would
technology's
have to
coming,
use
I
some.
guess.
You would have to use compositing effects or something to just like isolate where the eyes are compared to where the mask is in the movie.
If you
I
can
don't know.
deep fake the part, like, obviously the part of the face that's not covered, and then dub in some No Country lines on that, that would be amazing.
How much have you ever lost in darkness?
That'd be amazing.
Some ridiculous
let's see.
thing.
A couple other things before we go to the break on this plane sequence, but just like how The Dark Knight took the Skyhook idea from real life, and in the Bond movie Thunderball, this opening also comes right out of a James Bond movie.
Can I just bring up, we are still at the plane?
Yes.
So we are like 15 minutes into this fucking movie.
We're getting the
there's a lot to
character
talk
set up.
about. You know what I realized? A lot of these comics versus Nolan things are front loaded because I got to go into each one of the characters, which takes a while, and then like usually we speed up when we get further in the movie because there's no new characters to talk about. So that's why. But yeah, we're still in the plane sequence, guys.
Okay, go ahead. Bro.
So the Timothy Dalton Bond movie License to Kill also features a plane overtaking another plane, and that plane being turned basically inverted. So Nolan kind of may have been inspired by that. Considering he's such a huge James Bond fan, you know for a fact that he's seen that movie and all the other movies, so that's likely an influence. The other thing to bring up that was very confusing to me in the prologue, and then was mind-boggling that they got away with this, was the idea that they're doing this whole plane thing in order to steal that Dr. Pavel guy who's like in charge of the whole nuclear bomb thing. And they're just like, just to fake his death, we're going to transfer his blood into another dude. And I was like, yeah, but that's not how you actually identify a body. You use dental records. You're not going to check anybody's blood to see, like, who is this man?
We just
Is
did
that
it
what they were
because we thought
doing?
it was funny.
Yeah. That's what they were doing, yeah. Because then later on, they're just like, oh, he's supposed to be dead because, like, we found that they identified his body. I'm like, that's not how you identify bodies. So this is very similar to, like, the stupid bullet scene in the previous one, where I'm just like, that's not how
over that.
That's not how bullets work either.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Thoughts overall
Oh, by the
on-
way, he says they expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. Like, what was that all about again? Like, he wanted to, like, his brother's making a sacrificing himself for this whole cause.
He wanted him to sacrifice himself for the plane, but I don't. If it's on record that there were 3 prisoners brought on, I don't know what they mean then. By they expect one of us in the wreckage, wouldn't they expect 3 people in addition to the FBI agents and Dr. Pavel in there?
Yeah, the thing is, like, this whole thing, just to break this part down real quick, it's just like, I like that part, even though it doesn't make a whole lot of sense just because it kind of points to this kind of like League of Assassins cult-like mentality, and like people are straight up willing to sacrifice themselves for this greater cause, whatever it is, just to see. It's weird. It's like if Gotham breaks down, then the whole world breaks. It's like if the League of Assassins is like supposedly world changing, and we were the ones that sacked Rome. Actually, that was what's his name said that. Not
it was Ra's al Ghul, but yeah, still.
But like, there's these big worldwide things. They're so world international focused, but they really focus on Gotham most of all. So there's something special about Gotham, I guess we could say. And I don't know. I just think that there's something there, and I can't wait to go about it in further detail, Ben.
So this is about the blood thing? Oh, yeah, there's the Fire Rises part.
Fire Rises, he says that, and they expect one of us in the wreckage, brother.
Yeah,
just like there's something going, the culty kind of thing there I do like, but it doesn't make any sense plot-wise, and that was probably cut out, some of that stuff.
To be quite honest, you could cut out this entire prologue, and the rest of the movie would still make sense.
Yeah.
Because they talk about who that doctor dude is anyway. You don't have to worry about any of this stuff about why did he let them on and not identify the people who were under the black hoods. Like,
they spent too much on that sequence, bro.
Nolan just wanted to destroy that plane.
Yeah. To be fair, and he's doing it again in Tenet. But to be fair, I would feel the same way a little bit with The Dark Knight, because the thing is, the bank robbery sequence in the beginning of Dark Knight, it's great to watch. It's a great intro to the movie. But also, if you cut it from the rest of the story, you don't really lose anything. You don't. Right. There's like no major plot thing that happens.
You get like a bit of a philosophical kind of nod, but yeah, you're right.
Right, which gets developed later. But then, like, I would even argue Joker's entrance in the boardroom with the mobsters, where he's like, ha ha ha. Yeah. Like that was a better entrance in my opinion. But the thing is, like, the bank robbery is so enjoyable anyway, even though there's a few holes in that too. Like, you kind of excuse it, as opposed in this one where I was just more of like, Bane's voice, at least when I was watching the prologue in Mission Impossible, I was like, Bane's voice isn't understandable, the blood thing doesn't work, the guy let them on, and we have no explanation on that. Like, there's so much stuff that already didn't work for me in the opening that I was like, okay, maybe they get explained later in terms of how this works.
My popcorn is soggy.
Yes.
Also, like, even if they did like this blood transfusion, that doesn't change every single droplet of blood in your body.
Well, that
right?
too, yeah, that's that too. Or I'm just like, that's stupid. So like, nobody thought about this.
Yeah, it's always like there's probably aspects of that were rushed or whatever, right? You think?
Yeah,
they had
again,
enough
like,
time, maybe.
They supposedly had a 400-page draft, but I'm just like, was there going to be a 20-minute sequence of Batman trying to do some sort of forensic blood work on stuff? Like, what? I don't know if they were going to cover any of that stuff.
And then it's like, this isn't the guy. After like a half an hour.
After we already saw that it wasn't the guy anyway.
Take the audience down a 40-minute detour.
Yeah. He's detective-ing right now.
Yeah, it's detective mode. But yeah, that is the opening sequence. And with that, I'd say it is time for us to break. We're only about 5 minutes into the movie. This is a perfect start. But yeah, after the break, we will go deeper into the rest of
the next 5 minutes.
The next 5 minutes of Dark Knight Rises.
When they land, when they crash the plane.
Catch you after the break.
Hey everybody, it's Andrew. I just wanted to tell you about our friend Israel's retro gaming shop, Retro Co. If you go to retro-ko.com, you'll be able to see all of his retro gaming goodies. If you wanted to get that Sega Saturn hidden gem from back in the day, or if you wanted to get the Famicom disk system that you never got as a kid, or any other type of retro game that you were into, or import game, please go to retroco.com. That's retro-ko.com. And if you use the SuperHouse code Johnson's Ballsack, you'll be able to get a little bit of a discount at checkout. So please, once again, if you could just go to retroco.com. You can also go to facebook.com/retroco with no hyphen. That's RETROKO. You'll be able to find him on Facebook as well. If you were looking for that PlayStation import game that you never got, if you were looking for that Mega Drive game that you never got, or any other kind of retro game, any import game, it could even be European, Israel also curates bundles at RetroCo, and he'll curate that bundle just for you. So please go check him out. If you put in the code Johnson's Ballsack at checkout, you'll receive a SuperHouse discount.
It's a kerfuffle if I ever saw one.
This is Dustin Lee Massey at Dustin Lee Massey from Instagram, and you're listening to SuperHouse.
And we're back to part 2 of The Dark Knight Rises, part 1. Alright, so we're finally out of the plane sequence. We're like 1 hour into this episode. We're out of the plane sequence and we're now into the Wayne Manor party that we will spend the rest of this episode on, where we get introduced to a whole bunch of other characters, one of them being a congressman played by actor Brett Cullen, who would go on years later to play Thomas Wayne in Joker. Funny enough, when Brett Cullen played Thomas Wayne, he never had a scene in Wayne Manor. But when he's not playing Thomas Wayne, one of his main scenes is at Wayne Manor. So I thought that was kind of ironic. Other characters that were introduced real quick, I mentioned him earlier when we were talking about Treat Williams and who he might have been playing, but Matthew Modine is introduced as Deputy Commissioner Foley, who is potentially based off of a cop named Foley in the No Man's Land arc that I talked about earlier. There's not really a lot of similarities between the two, but it is worth mentioning that that's probably a comic book Easter egg. Some of the bigger characters introduced, though, were the villains or the sub-villains. So we got Ben Mendelsohn
by the way, I always thought of when I hear Foley and cop, I think of Beverly Hills Cop.
I know, right?
Next series of deep dives, folks.
Should have gotten Eddie Murphy. You should have gotten Eddie Murphy to cameo in this.
I do love Eddie Murphy. Anyway.
So before he was Krennic in Rogue One or the Talos dude in Captain Marvel, Ben Mendelsohn was in The Dark Knight Rises, and it's sometimes easy to forget that because it was kind of a thankless role. But
you think money gives you power over me?
Be careful not to choke on your aspiration. Oh wait, that's the wrong guy.
They both use breathing things.
Yeah, no, right? Just kidding. I'm sure there's some YouTube edit where somebody dubs that in.
Bane Vader voice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or they switch it. Or they switch it. Bane's voice is coming out of Darth Vader. But whatever the case, he plays John Daggett, who may be inspired by Roland Daggett from the animated series. Yeah. And Roland Daggett is the businessman dude who's responsible for the birth of Clayface.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Daggett. Oh god, I love Clayface.
He was voiced by Ed Asner in the original animated series, but he was never a comic book character. He was just exclusive to the cartoon. Yeah. But in the movie, I guess they decide, he's a corrupt businessman. Let's have him do another corrupt businessman dude. So like they just took the name Daggett. They didn't take Roland for whatever reason. They just said, I don't know, maybe Roland was not realistic enough of a name. I don't know. Whatever the case was, they named him John Daggett in this, and he barely has a role, but it's worth noting. And then the last character who's introduced in this is the worst kept secret of the film, which is Miranda Tate, a.k.a. Talia al Ghul.
Baby girl.
Now,
hubba.
Before you guys saw this movie, did you already know that or figure out that was probably going to be Talia? Or was this... Because it seemed like a big thing in terms of internet speculation, but if you weren't already part of those things, you might not have really thought about it.
I knew. For sure.
I really don't think I knew.
This was the first Batman movie where I was kind of like getting to be part of like the internet conversation. I think.
Yeah.
Like even 2008. No, wait. When did Dark Knight come out? 2008.
2008.
2005, 2008. Yeah, so 2008. I don't think I was quite there yet, but with this, I was kind of following it a little bit.
You had read up on the comic. Yeah. So it was. It was kind of like, oh, she plays Miranda Tate, and everyone was just like, she's Talia. Like,
I am dumb.
Response online, yeah. That was random. And I'm just like, if you're gonna just repeat the same twist from the previous movie, at least in like Batman Begins, it was like, oh, I'm Ducard, and Ducard was like an obscure character in the comics. If you Googled Ducard in the comics, it would say he's the guy who trained Batman, so you wouldn't really think that much about it. But like Miranda Tate, I'm like, really? You're gonna do the same thing? But
my favorite part was when Miranda Tate said, "Gotcha, bitch." You guys remember that part? Gotcha, bat bitch.
I do remember that. That was also
yeah, that was great.
But
And then she roller skated out of there.
With Harley.
Talia,
It was weird.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Talia serving as a corporate businesswoman actually is not something that's unique to the movie. Around the time of Lex Luthor being president in the comics, he couldn't keep running LexCorp at the same time, so he appointed Talia to be the CEO of LexCorp. So that was interesting, but she was secretly planning to undermine him the whole time, and
Not
that's
that
a whole
robot
other deep
woman that was in Justice League or whatever. Batman vs Superman.
That robot? You mean Mercy?
Mercy. She's robot, right?
You're not supposed to say that anymore.
Tao Okamoto, right?
The actual term is cyborg, I believe now.
Cybernetic organism.
You need
Yes.
sensitivity training, bro.
Cybernetic
man.
organism. Tissue over metal endoskeleton.
I'm a cybernetic organism.
Skynet.
Yeah, and then we find out that Bruce Wayne has been social distancing for about 8 years. Social distance champion before it was even a thing, before the social distance was even a term. And he is not only retired from being Batman, it seems like he's retired from being Bruce Wayne. So that connects a little bit into The Dark Knight Returns, where he had been in retirement as Batman for about 8 years.
This was like the
or so.
first point in the movie, other than like this plane stuff. I don't think you get like the plane problems that you mentioned. I don't think most people got that first time they watched it. But when a lot of fans, when they see Bruce Wayne cooped up for 8 years, it was like a signal to a lot of Batman fans. It's like, okay, here we go. Like,
Yeah.
this is maybe not gonna be the best Batman movie.
Yeah.
It was not set up in the previous movie at all, because at the end he's like, because he can take it, says Gordon. I'm like, well, apparently he can't take
That's
it
right,
because
that's
he
right.
quit.
It's an epic ending of him running in the fucking gutter away
Yeah.
from some crazy shit, and he's like not what they want, but he's what they deserve. It's like incredible deep shit going on, and now we cut to him with the fucking social distancing beard and
Right.
with a limp that he doesn't want to fucking fix. Come on,
Yeah.
dude. It's just too sulky.
But,
Too sulky.
but when he actually does fix it, it takes like 2 seconds. He's like,
Exactly.
here's the thing that Lucius gave me. I'm like, really? 8 years later? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Lazy Batman.
there's some connections here to The Dark Knight Returns. Both versions of Bruce Wayne grow out their facial hair post-Batman because they don't have to worry about the chin showing in the mask anymore. Bruce himself is doing some Oliver Queen type cosplay here because he's got the goatee and he shoots a bow. and
Yeah.
arrow.
Oh,
So he
right.
looked like a fucking pirate.
I forgot about that.
And then let's see. In the comic, he hung up the cowl because he lost Jason Todd, and the government passed an act that banned superheroes. In the movie, it's somewhat similar because he lost Rachel Dawes in the previous movie, and then they passed the Harvey Dent Act, which was cleaning up the streets. So this is our next thing in terms
Right.
of comics versus movie. We have two different takes on Batman/Bruce Wayne's retirement. Which do you prefer? The Dark Knight Returns type of retirement where he got old, Jason died, and the government banned superheroes, and he just decided to quit for 10 years, or the version that's in The Dark Knight Rises where he's still in his 30s or so, but he decided to quit even though he's supposed to take it, and the Harvey Dent Act passed, and he has an injury suddenly. So, which do you prefer, starting with Wolfie?
I think that definitely the comics over this one. I feel like it would take everything possible to stop. I mean, we hope that it would take everything possible to stop Bruce from wanting to be Batman. We wouldn't have Batman, you know, and you've gotten to the heights of losing Jason Todd and having his back broken. The Jason Todd arc makes so much sense because of like the sheer gravitas of losing essentially his surrogate son, you know. And it's like the tables are turning, so there's that drama there. But yeah, in terms of the movies, I just always wondered why they did that. It's not the lazy Batman like I was saying, but it's definitely lazy writing. Boom.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I definitely prefer the comics.
Yep. All right, on to Andrew.
Okay, so people go through depression, long-term depression, but this still sucks. This sucks, dude. Like, this decision, not good. I maybe quit for like a month. I don't know. Like, I don't know what time limit I'd want, but it's just, or maybe him like consider quitting, like have a real crisis of faith in the Bat moment, but not really actually quit. You know what I mean? So I think something like that would have been better.
Or if the prologue was just Bane putting him out of commission for 8 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's and what's worse is like what Ben said. It got seemingly no connection at all to the other one, and maybe we can chalk that up to Heath Ledger dying. That really fucked up their plans. Who knows? But it's still like, arguably, you should have like the best writers in Hollywood. You have two serious hits under your belt. Nolan's got a name. And it's just like, this is what you come up with. This element's not good. So obviously comics.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go with the movie on this one.
What?
Ooh.
No, are you fucking kidding me? Of course I'm gonna go with the comics on this.
Dude,
We're such suckers.
You got me.
I have a whole rant prepared. I was just waiting.
Gotcha, bitch.
Gotcha, bitch. Okay, so as if I didn't make it a secret on this. To me, I haven't really said this out loud and on this, but to me, people were just like, the Dark Knight trilogy is like the Godfather trilogy of superhero movies. I'm just like, yes, it is. In my opinion, here's how it goes.
Yep.
Slightly controversial, but in my opinion, the first one of each is actually my favorite because it's got the tightest story. Second one is still good, Dark Knight and Godfather Part II, but just a little long, just in length for me, and had some stuff that could have been cut. Slightly overrated, but I still like them. Dark Knight Rises is definitely the Godfather 3 of superhero movies, though. This is the most disappointing for me in the theater, probably even more so than Batman and Robin, because at least when Batman and Robin, I was 7, and I went in expecting a cartoon. Here, it was like, where did this idea come from? So first off, he now has a leg injury, which was not planned at all. He was still able to run. He was kind of fucked up a little bit if you watch the end of Dark Knight, but like it's something that he's easily able to cure afterwards anyway. So that gets thrown out the window. Second of all, you didn't even need to have him quit being Bruce Wayne. Think about it. He quits, like the stuff they talk about where he's just like, oh, like the orphanage isn't funded again. Daggett took over like Wayne Enterprises type stuff, and Bruce Wayne's been a recluse. Who says that he needed to quit being Batman in order to do that? You could have done the same stuff, but he's Batman 24/7, and that's why he neglected all that type of stuff. You don't need to have him quit being Batman, especially because you're going to have him quit being...
themes of the Bat taking over everything in his life. Yeah, and that would have been a really cool theme,
This movie starts off, he's retired and injured, then he gets out of retirement, and then he gets injured. So he has to retire again. Then he gets healed, and then he retires again. So it's like, this is why I nicknamed the movie Batman Quits Twice. At the time, because he does. He quits twice in this.
Really?
They fix his leg with that one quick way they fix it, and then they also do a fucking karate kick to his back to fix his back too. Come on, man, this is lazy, dude.
This is lazy writing, especially in comparison to what was before. I mean, we poked holes in the previous ones, but it wasn't nearly as big as this. Also, last thing, but what the fuck is the Harvey Dent Act? They're just like, the Harvey Dent Act clean up the streets. I'm just like, what, you decided to actually enforce criminals? You decided to actually do your jobs? Like, they don't explain anything about what the Harvey Dent Act is supposed to be. It's vague about what it's supposed to be and how this was supposed to work for like 8 years. And if it's based on the lie, quote unquote, it's based off the lie of Harvey Dent. And I'm just like, well, not really. Harvey had nothing to do with it. They named it after him. Him being Two-Face doesn't actually neglect the law because he didn't write the law or any of that. So that doesn't make any sense either. The only chaos that comes about from that being exposed comes from Bane. It doesn't come from people losing hope because of learning about the truth of Harvey Dent. So the whole ending of Dark Knight doesn't go anywhere because the truth of it doesn't lead to any consequence. Or if it does lead to consequence, it's convoluted because the consequences were caused by Bane in the first place. So there's that. And then this whole 8-year bullshit is never justified. You could have just been like, oh, it's been 8 weeks. Dark Knight.
Right.
And the story wouldn't be any different.
And that would have shown how shitty the crime has gotten as well.
Exactly.
Batman after fucking 8 weeks. Come on.
Yeah, like doesn't it also like it's also weird that
I'm tweeting Christian Bale right now.
Yeah. It's also weird that Gotham is all cleaned up.
Release the Bale
without
cut.
Batman. Yeah, release the Bale. It's weird that Gotham is now clean without Batman's presence. And then this is the time that Bane decides to strike. It's like, no, don't go after it with the Joker to take down this horrible city. Take it down when it's clean. I'm like, why? If the whole point is to take down corruption and everything, why would you hit at that time? What the hell
Well,
have they been doing
Bane's
for 8
got like
years?
religious fucking like near religious cult reasons though. So I don't know. It's
True, but
they want to sack Gotham like they sacked Rome. You know, they want to steer humanity in some fucking direction for some reason, and Gotham's at the central point. It's still all weird though.
yeah, Ra's al Ghul dies in Batman Begins. Maybe a year happens until Dark Knight, and then 8 years. Bane waits 8 years to enact this plan.
Yeah.
He couldn't have hit it anytime sooner. So like that does none of this stuff actually
They
works.
they need an explanation for the timing for sure.
Yeah. Again, why couldn't it have been 8 weeks? There's no reason why it had to be 8 years or so. So none of that shit works. But obviously, we're hands down voting for the comics on this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Moving on to the. Okay, we actually did make it out of the Wayne Manor party. Let's continue.
Yeah.
6 minutes.
Technically, Batman's still retired, but we're getting there.
He needs to
moving
go
on.
see a comedic doctor.
Yeah, we'll cover that. We might have to cover that next episode. But right now, we have one more character who was introduced that I didn't talk about, which was the quote-unquote the maid who comes to deliver his food, who turns out not to be a maid at all. And that's, of course, Anne Hathaway as Catwoman, or Selena Kyle, as she's called, because she's never formally called Catwoman in the whole movie. At most, she's called the
That's
Cat.
right. Nolan had something, and again, this is because I was reading the shit at the time. He was like, I couldn't have somebody purring on screen. They had to be a femme fatale kind of type. You know what I'm saying?
That's his
like,
first
you have-
mistake.
you have
Purring
a
would have
movie
got him an
where-
Oscar.
You have a movie where the guy's called Batman. You can't say Catwoman.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Really?
He was. It's just weird. Like it's like he made some of the best decisions, Nolan. You know, but him not being a comic fan, he just like didn't get other really base things about it.
Yeah.
And at this point, he was probably a little disenfranchised by the experience of working on him after Heath. Maybe.
That's honestly my theory, is that this was kind of just like, hey, I'll do this last one if you guys let me do
Contractual
what. Yeah, you guys let me. You guys let me do whatever the fuck I want with Interstellar and Dunkirk and Tenet. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing this to get creative control on other stuff, because that's honestly how it feels. It feels like a lot of the stuff is phoned in, at least on the creative side, and the people who are giving it their all are all the newcomers.
Yeah.
Tom Hardy's Bane, Anne Hathaway, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who we'll get in later, but like those are the guys who are putting in their all in terms of the actual writing and everything. It's just like, nobody thought to bring this stuff up. They were just like, all right, yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, in here apparently, yeah, Nolan was hesitant to include Catwoman until his brother convinced him, pitching the idea of her being a con woman, femme fatale type, which again, that's already built into the character, so I don't know why you needed to have that pointed out. But yeah, they did draw off of Batman #1. Once again, that was not only the first appearance of the Joker, but also the first appearance of Catwoman, where she was just called the Cat, and she didn't wear a Catwoman outfit. She was actually in disguise the whole time as an old woman.
As a house cat.
Not as a house cat. There's a panel where, and this is horribly dated, but there's a panel where Batman rubs the old woman makeup off of her, and he's like, "Quiet or Papa Spank." And I was like, "What?"
God.
They are in BDSM gear.
1940.
Yeah.
I think as long as it's a safe space, I encourage their experimentation.
Yeah.
I believe we all know who wrote those lines.
Yes.
Big
His
Daddy
name is
Kane.
Bob Kane.
Bob Kane. Yeah. So in that one, it was
Heaven isn't
over,
easy.
Yeah. It was over a necklace, and Batman was able to see through her disguise and recover the necklace, which is what Bruce eventually does. So it is slightly influenced by Batman #1. But Anne Hathaway had to kind of fight for this role. She was one of many who auditioned. So I looked into, none of these actresses have really commented years later, but these were who were being reported by Deadline in terms of meaning for the female leads of this movie. And I kind of have a feeling who was for Talia and who was for Catwoman. But they said the people who auditioned or were considered were Rachel Weisz, Naomi Watts, Keira Knightley, Blake Lively, Natalie Portman, Jessica Biel, Gemma Arterton, Charlotte Riley, who I think is Tom Hardy's wife, and Kate Mara. Now, I have a feeling out of those, Rachel Weisz and Naomi Watts were probably for Talia, just given that they're a little older than the others who were up for Catwoman. But everyone else was probably for Catwoman, just given the age range. And
Dude, Keira Knightley, I could totally see as a Catwoman type.
I could see, honestly, though, when the list came out, I was like, it's either going to go to Hathaway or Knightley. I just had a feeling like Nolan would go towards them versus like Blake Lively. I was like, there's no way he's going to cast Blake Lively in this. But then again, he also cast Katie Holmes, so I'm like, maybe he would. But in general, I was just like, not when it's up against like Anne Hathaway and stuff. This was reported recently, but Anne Hathaway originally assumed that she was being asked to play Harley Quinn. Because they're like, look, the Joker is gone, so they want me, and I'm kind of known for being like bubbly and comedic, especially because this was like post-Oscars with James Franco and everything. So they're like, oh, he just wants me to be the Joker. So she came in like an outfit that was like all stripy and stuff and had flat shoes and was giving Chris Nolan all these like crazy smiles. And Chris Nolan came in and he's like, all right, so the role is for Catwoman. And she was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, sure, I can do that.
I'm going to just say props to her for knowing who Harley Quinn was at that time.
Oh yeah. Very
For sure.
true, because it wasn't. She hadn't quite taken off. She didn't have her own comic line. But I can't blame her for thinking that that's what they wanted her to play.
I know Gal
give it
Gadot thought she was auditioning for Catwoman whenever she was taken in for Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
She would have been a great Catwoman.
Yeah. But Hathaway said that she looked back at Heidi Lamar films, and Heidi Lamar is the one that Bob Kane claimed to have been the actress that he was inspired by when he created quote-unquote Catwoman.
I was staring at her through a hole in the wall. And I just thought to myself, boy, that kitty's pretty. Anyway,
she might
go ahead.
be an 11 broad.
But yeah, she was trying to channel sort of the femme fatale from old school black and white movies especially when she was in the Catwoman suit, which we'll go into later. Not a lot of comics versus Nolan stuff to go in right now because it was pretty much just a version of the Batman #1 story. But we will have a plan to go over for the next character we have to talk about, because right after this party where Catwoman steals from Bruce Wayne, we cut to the Gotham City Police Department rooftop where we meet the world's greatest detective in the Nolanverse. Not Batman, but John Blake, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt,
right.
because this guy figures out who Batman is just by a look.
That's true. The best. You're right. That's also lazy writing. The other thing I wanted to say real quick before we move on from this scene,
Sure.
I always kind of felt like Christian Bale was a little bit he should have been a little bit more tense whenever Catwoman is holding his fucking mother's pearls. He's a little bit.
Yeah.
He wants the pearls back, but I feel like the tension should have been amped up a little more. It's like he almost. I don't know. It just seems like he cares less about the pearls than he should.
He should have slammed her up against the wall and ripped them out of her hands, and then looked at her deep in the eyes, and then started to remove her clothing. And all the while,
All right,
Bob Kane
get out of here, Bob Kane.
is looking. No, listen to my pitch. No.
You know what? I like what you're saying. I want you to keep going.
Bob
You're
Kane's
gonna
like
have
the
a
guy who's
future.
like, movie's any good? Got titty in it?
Yeah, exactly.
If it ain't got titty, I ain't paying for that.
Does she have all manner of feminine wiles?
Jesus. It is, though, I'll give it props in terms of the writing, that this is, funny enough, when he's not being Batman, one of the few times where you get to see him as a detective and him figuring out that she stole the pearls and then later on trying to track her, and all that
That's
sequence
true.
is good in terms of detective stuff.
That's true.
As a side tangent, I've never really talked that much about my opinions on Bale and everything, but a lot of everybody through the internet, he's like one of the most beloved Batmans. But to me, I think he was a great Bruce Wayne in the scenes of Alfred, with Michael Caine.
Yeah, it was those are always really well written.
Those are always great. As Playboy Bruce, he was kind of a douche and channeling Patrick Bateman, but that was more in the writing, not necessarily his performance. But as Batman, I'm kind of just like, I don't like the suit. I don't like the voice. And I don't like the way that he delivers a lot of the lines, especially with all the, like, it's almost like he was trying to channel the Adam West type pausing with the whole, like, the city just showed you. It's full of people.
He's like, God damn.
Take a breather there, kid. Take a breather.
Catch my breath.
So, like, in my opinion, I'm just like, I'm not a big fan of him in the actual, in terms of performance in the Batsuit. when he's actually Batman. I'm not a big Christian Bale Batman fan. I'm just not. And whenever I see people just like, he was the best one, I'm just like, most people make fun of his version. Like, I feel like
and the Nolan
it's
fighting.
Yeah,
really
and the Nolan
agree.
fighting. Yeah, and I'm like, he's on the top because the movies that surround him.
Yeah,
if
right.
you put Ben Affleck in the same movie, same script,
Oh my God.
Oh Lord, you might have to stop now.
and he
before
played the
I
same thing.
Pass
I
out.
know.
Yeah,
people would be saying the
I'm
same
really
thing about
all
him.
behind Affleck as Batman, even though
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
past. But
And look, I think Bale is a great actor. He should have gotten an Oscar for Patrick Bateman, honestly, years before he got it for The Fighter. But his actual performance in the movies, I've always found lacking, as Batman, specifically. The Bruce Wayne scenes with Michael Caine, okay, like, he's good in those, but, like, the actual scenes of him specifically in the suit, I've never been a huge fan of them, and I feel like a lot of the reasons why he's on people's number one is because of the movies that surround him, as well as other performances, not his actual performance in the suit.
I agree, and I want to say, since you brought up Alfred, I think this is Alfred's movie. This is the best Alfred ever, in my opinion. I feel the most for Alfred in Dark Knight Rises.
Well, it's definitely the one where he cries the most. Like, it's,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. They give
When
just
they
give,
break up.
they give Alfred more to do. I think. I don't know. I thought it was good.
I like that he drinks Frina Branca.
Oh yeah, he does bring that up in that scene, but we'll get there when we get to that part. But
It's a digestif. Very good.
the what's the digestif?
It's something. It's like a little cocktail, or it's like a little drink you would drink after you eat your meal. It's like heavy, herbal, sweet. It like really helps to settle your stomach after you've eaten. So a digestif or an aperitif. An aperitif would be like a small little light, cold, fruity kind of wine, maybe before you eat. With
The
salad.
French have a lot of other words for foods that we don't use that
Yeah.
much. Like there's the
Yeah.
whole amuse-bouche, which is essentially a kind of appetizer, literally to amuse the mouth.
Oh yeah.
So
Get
they were
yourself a
creative with
gosh
that
dang
name.
amuse-bouche over there.
Jeez. All right. Well, I've never tried the drink that Alfred
Try it.
mentions
You'll,
in it.
you'll hear
but
a lot of
only-
people call it Fernet, but it's
Yeah, I
Frina.
imagine. Yeah.
Do you remember Be My Lover? Won't you be my lover?
Oh yeah.
You know, the 90s club hit? That was from a band called La Bouche. The mouth.
That's what your last name kind of means, doesn't it?
Mine's just straight up a bush.
Andrew Mouth.
I wish I was French. No,
That's
it's
what
just,
led to this podcast.
It's just English. It's just literally
Okay, yeah.
somebody fucking fucked a bush back in the day. I don't know. It was just it's just the bush, the
You were
plant.
descended from bushes.
Yeah.
Nice.
It comes from Moses when the bush was on fire.
Yes.
All right, keep going. Sorry.
All right. So
Bale played
John-
Moses.
he did. Yeah, he did. Didn't he?
Boom.
We brought it back
6
around,
degrees.
baby. We brought it back
Speaking
around.
of
We planned
whitewashing,
this out.
Speaking of whitewashing, exactly. It's not some fucking Middle Eastern guy. It's a fucking dude from Liverpool, wherever the fuck he's from.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Bale played Moses. But anyway.
Hello, I'm Moses. I'm here to
played-
save the people of
he was-
Israel, or wherever
He
the
was
fuck it is.
Jesus too at one point.
And I'm
actually.
also
Yep.
Jesus.
He's also
I don't have
Jesus.
a complex.
I think, yeah, so on to the next part. Who the fuck am I talking about? Oh, yeah, John Blake. Okay, so funny enough, there is a character named Johnny Blake in Batman number 13 who gets his report card stolen by the Joker.
That vile, vicious fiend.
I'm like, honestly, I would have been cool if the reason why there was an 8-year gap was that Joseph Gordon-Levitt was in grade school, or like in school, and then Heath Ledger's Joker stole his report card. And he's like, ever since then, I've wanted to become a cop because he stole it. So he's done
They
Batman
needed
comic.
some sort of a
My
motivation.
only
back
A.
then. I wanted to show it to my mom, and then, goddamn,
There's nothing
Joker
to
stole
pin
it.
on the
Joker
fridge.
stole it. I'm like, dude, if Joker stole your report card and you're still alive, you got off easy compared to everyone else in that movie. But okay, but yeah, obviously, if you're listening to this, you've seen the movie, you know that Blake isn't just Blake. He is the Nolan-verse version of Robin, because apparently that's his real first name. So Robin John Blake, he does have a few connections, somewhat loose, to the Robin in the comics. John is actually the middle name of Dick Grayson.
Oh, shit.
Dick John.
So there's
So-
something there.
there's a little something there. Blake also kind of rhymes with Drake, as in Tim Drake. It's kind of loose, but I'm trying here, guys. And then John Paul Valley. There's the John in John Paul Valley, the guy who takes on the mantle of Batman when his back is broken by Bane. But I think the biggest one is that during a time where Dick Grayson first became Nightwing and went to Bloodhaven, he enrolled in the police department. And he was a cop. He was a beat cop as part of the police department, which they also covered in Titans at that point. But that's likely where that comes from. But yeah, Blake is kind of a version of multiple different Robin over the years, I would say. But just real quick, what would you say in terms of comics versus movie? We got the comic book Robin, who's had his own history over 80 years or so. And then we got this sort of Nolanized, realistic cop version of Robin in this movie, starting with Wolfie.
I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a great casting for this particular type of role. I just think, kind of with what you're saying about Christian Bale's Batman, and he's not a strong enough figure to be leading a team yet, or I guess, if he's giving up, at this point. And what was the question exactly? Sorry.
The Joseph Gordon-Levitt Robin versus the Robin in the comics.
Oh, yeah, definitely pick Robin in the comics. I felt like Joseph Gordon-Levitt would have been a great Robin. But then I think to have that dynamic work and to have like a strong narrative, you also need the crux of the emotion of that character has to be tied to Batman. And I feel like Batman or Bruce is in such a crisis right now. Just we're in a crisis having to watch him get back into being Batman.
Right.
That it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for this like amalgamated Robin to flourish, which was kind of a shame. But good casting, misuse maybe. I prefer the comics.
Yeah. All right, Andrew.
I think the fact that you couldn't ask this question without even chuckling says it all, Ben. I think it's gonna have to go with the comics on this one. I agree with Wolfie that Jiggles is always acceptable in my heart, and he was in like 20 movies. Yeah, man, JGL
During this
Jiggles.
time, yeah, this is the height of his stuff. Yeah.
He was in like fucking like 20, 30 movies in 1 year at this time. He hasn't done quite as much since then. But and Anne Hathaway as well too. It's weird. But anyway, so yeah, of course, dude. This Robin sucked.
Well, here's the thing. I also think he's the MVP of this movie personally. In terms of, like, he's the only one who's trying to like actually do shit. Meanwhile, Bale is just moping around in Wayne Manor.
True.
But then again,
he doesn't
how much
suck.
of that
I take it back.
Yeah, but then how much of that is just because of the movie he's surrounded by? Like, he probably sucks compared to the Robin in the comics, but compared to everything else in this movie, he's great.
Yeah. Well, Terry McGinnis steals the suit in the first episode of Beyond.
Right.
And that's such great like character agency or whatever. Yeah. Like, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How cool would
like,
that have been if like Batman is not trying, and so John Blake is like, there's some obvious shit, and he steals the suit, and he's Batman for like a night, but then Bruce is like, nah, man, let me show you how to be Batman, and then they fucking take on the League of Shadows while everybody's
together.
Locked down.
He puts him through the fucking League of Shadows training on his own. He bestows all the knowledge because he stole his suit. His leg is fucked up. Bane's taking over, especially in the third act.
It would be
Robin's arc.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm excited. And Robin's arc is, essentially because he's getting a crash course in all this knowledge that Bruce knows. So there's that conflict of like, you're not good enough. You need to be better. And you have this arc around the end.
You gotta live up to him,
yeah. And then leads into Bat Family. I don't know, but
that would feel a lot more earned because, like, honestly, he has like 2-3 scenes with Bale in this entire thing, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Like, there's not really any sort of character relationship between the two in the entire thing. So yeah, obviously mine is to the comics because just how emotional it is for him to take in under his wing this orphan kid. And by the time that Joseph Gordon-Levitt shows up in this, like, he's already a grown-ass man.
Yeah, it would make sense. It's why Chris O'Donnell worked, and forever.
Yeah.
40-year-old Chris O'Donnell.
Yeah, but they at least still went through the whole, like, oh, you're in Wayne Manor, you're part of my world, I'm training you, that type of stuff. Here it's just like, yeah, here in this one, it's just like, yeah, I'm a cop, and I know you're Batman, and you want to be Batman again? No? All right, I guess I got to do shit. And then at the end, he's like, all right, I guess I'm Batman now. Like, they don't really have much of a partnership.
This movie should have been John Blake Begins. Like, he goes through the training, and then Batman is Ra's al Ghul, but he doesn't turn evil. Like,
yeah, no. I mean, that's what if listeners who really want to go back to the backlog, there is an episode called Ben 1 and the Bat, and that's where I pitched the idea of a Nolan-versed Robin movie done right, where, because there's so much you can do with Bale passing on the stuff he learned from Liam Neeson in the previous stuff, but actually like doing it right and teaching him how to do it, and being about whole, like, I said I wanted to inspire people, maybe I have to be more direct about inspiring people in this, and training this kid, and it would have gone full circle, because you've seen this Batman start off in an origin movie, and now you get to see him pass on what he learned, and I don't think we're ever going to get that opportunity again, to be honest, because they're not going to want to do another origin thing. We're already skipping the origin in the Battinson type thing, so we're not going to feel that emotional cycle ever again. We don't have a chance to see that ever again, unfortunately, unless they at some point decide to do a TV show where that becomes to be part of it. But we've missed out on that, and also I know we're not at the end yet where we reveal the twist on Robin, but the fact that his name is Robin is fucking lame.
Yeah,
like
best way they could
you
reveal
should go
it.
with your first name.
Yeah.
Robin.
What an
No,
alias.
lady. I got beat up because of that name.
Look, some people are just like, well, if it was just called Dick Grayson or Tim Drake or something, you wouldn't know what it is. I'm just like, okay, I have a fix for that. If you really want to do Cop Robin, right, if you're like, look, we already got Joseph Gordon-Levitt, we don't want to cut him, we don't have time for this orphan thing, I think the way you do it is, all right, just go ahead and call him Tim Drake or something, because that's kind of who, just name him either Tim Drake or Dick Grayson, or whichever one you want to go with. Right, just be okay with that. And then later on, when Gotham gets taken over by Bane, Gordon's like, okay, we got to call each other code names and stuff over the thing, and he chooses the name Robin as that, and then maybe he has like a Nolan-verse realistic version of it where he's got like, it's raining, so he's got the yellow poncho over like a red vest type of thing, and that's kind of like his version of it. Yeah. But that way you still get the idea of like, oh, that's Robin in this, because he goes by that but it's like you get your cake and eat it too sort of thing, where it's like you get Robin in this, but it's the Nolan-verse version of it, and you can tell by the colors that's supposed to be him, but it's believable. He's not a kid, he can fight based off his police training, and maybe you get a few scenes of him and Bale's Batman fighting together, and that's the closest we'll get to see to Batman and Robin on screen in the Nolan-verse. But to me, that's a more creative way to do it than just be like, and at the end we reveal his first name is actually Robin. I'm like, how did this pass through anything? Like, that is
audible gasps in my
incredibly
theater,
cheap.
though. Audible gasps.
Yeah, and in mine, and some laughs, but in the back of my head, I'm just like, yeah, I kind of figured.
Yeah,
but also,
my dad,
I don't
whenever
know.
he was going before the reveal, he's like training him in the car, like wear a mask and all that. Mm-hmm. My dad's like, he gonna be Robin. He's gonna be Robin.
He gonna be Robin.
I called it immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
He gonna be Robin.
He's gonna be Robin.
It is at least nice that you do have that kind of younger detective good guy thing going, at least. Like, at the very least, we did get some dynamic that pointed towards that within this trilogy.
Yeah. So they at least had part of it. But again, this also feels like they just threw all their ideas against the wall. There's like, we want a cultural revolution, and Bane and the League of Shadows coming back, and also Catwoman. And let's throw in some Robin in there too. But let's do the Dark Knight Returns and the Cult and No Man's Land on top of that. I'm like, you could have split this up into multiple movies if you wanted to, or at least go with one thing that unifies it more. But we got what we got. But yeah, so that's another reverter to the comics. I don't know. I think movie might have a chance to win, but so far it doesn't have any chance right now.
Not looking good.
Not looking good, bro. Going into then, let's see, the scene after that is the Batcave, where Bruce Wayne is investigating the pearls. Again, this is the most detective-like that Bale's Batman has been in the three movies, which is ironic because he's not actually supposed to be Batman right now. But one of the funniest things here is that there is if you look at it again, there's a blooper here where it's a headline about Catwoman, about the cat steals something from Jewel Heist, and heist is misspelled.
What? Is it really?
It is. It's Hiest.
I before E. Wait. What is it?
I before E, except after C.
After C, yeah, exactly. And it's not after C.
Wait, but H-E-I. Never mind. We'll figure it.
H-E-I-S-T, yeah.
Yeah,
And in the movie, it's H-I-E-S-T. And I'm like,
Yeah,
nobody used spell check, I'm guessing, in the props department. Like, nobody caught this? Okay.
Oh man, I didn't catch that, and I usually catch that stuff. Wow.
I don't think I'm not sure if I caught it in the theater, but I definitely remember people online talking about it afterwards. And I'm just like, that just goes to show just how fucking careless this whole production was on this. Because I'm like, how can you even let that go? We're still trying to figure out the whole 8 years thing. 8 years after this movie was out, and we got the heist thing is now Heist. Heist, yes. All right, so Alfred then goes into this whole thing about, I once had this fantasy where, I went to Italy and you were over there and, we would just look at each other. And what was funny is that...
just look at each other.
We would just look at each other and I would walk away and that would be it. And
give a little wink.
Give a little wink. The funny thing is, have you guys seen Good Will Hunting?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I always felt that was a take on the same thing where Ben Affleck was just like, the best part of my day is going up to your door and thinking for 5 seconds that you won't be there. And then later on he gets to fulfill that fantasy, which was then ironic when Ben Affleck got cast as Batman.
Right.
So I thought that was always an interesting parallel. But I always kind of felt like this sort of just gave away what the ending was. When I was watching it, I'm just like, why would you do this?
Right.
Like, when I was watching this, I'm like, this feels random. You're definitely going to pay this off in some way. And then the moment I saw Alfred at the end where he's like going into the restaurant, I'm just like, oh, he's alive. Like, Bruce Wayne's alive. He's going to show up. He's going to fulfill the like, we saw this coming. Like, it's not hidden that well. Like, the thing about, the fact that they even shot a whole fantasy thing on top of that, just so that they could parallel it at the end, I think made it even more obvious. Because at least in Good Will Hunting, it just felt like it fit the scene, and you didn't really think, oh, they're totally going to pay that off later. You just thought like, oh man, that's what his friend really thinks about him. But in this one, they just went all out. I'm just like, I'm not sure if you really needed that, and kind of gave it away at the end, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you totally expect that to happen. I was thinking the same thing. What I always hated about this, though, was everybody's like, well, everybody could see that Bruce Wayne is there. I'm like, okay, we know who Elon Musk is, and we know who Branson is at Virgin. Like, we can sort of pick those out. Most people can't even pick them out, probably. Yeah. So, like, there's a lot of billionaires out there, man. Yeah, and he's in Italy. He's not in Gotham. So this is one point where I just felt like I hated that nerd criticism where they said that, oh, he would have been spotted outside at a restaurant.
Well,
like, not necessarily.
What about Falcone being like, you're Bruce Wayne, the Prince of Gotham. You got to travel 1,000 miles to find somebody who don't know your name.
Well, he traveled thousands of miles. He's in Italy. It still holds up.
What about Ra's al Ghul then saying, the world is too small for Bruce Wayne to disappear?
That's just him getting inside of his head, bro.
Okay, all right.
I don't know.
Fair enough.
I feel like I mean, maybe you're right. But I still felt like it was. It's one of those points where I could kind of let pass. There's some things I can't let pass, but I could let that one pass.
All right, we'll talk about the ending when we get to the end in terms
yeah.
of opinions on that stuff. We're jumping a little bit, but
4 months from now.
4 months, yeah. All right, so one quick thing after this is that there's a scene after the Batcave where Catwoman meets with another dude named Mr. Stryver, who's again another name from Tale of Two Cities, but it's that creepy dude played by Bern Gorman. But there's another character in this named Jen, who is Selina's friend, and I believe that was a role that Zoe Kravitz was trying to be up for. Which is interesting because now she's Catwoman for the Batman. However, she was not even allowed to audition for it, and here's why. She said, and this was before she was cast as Catwoman, she said, in the last Batman movie, they told me I couldn't get an audition for a small role they were casting because they weren't, quote unquote, going urban.
Mm-hmm.
God, I hate that urban thing, man. It's
so
a lot lot has been pointed out in this episode in terms of
there's a lot of whitewashing in this movie.
Yeah.
It's just like Gotham City's based on New York. It's like it doesn't get much more urban than that, for one. And
right.
I don't know. B, it's just terrible. It's just terrible altogether.
All right. Well, yeah. Other than Morgan Freeman, name another non-white person in this movie.
Oh shit. Commissioner Loeb. Oh wait, no, that's the last movie.
He's dead
Damn
already.
it. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah,
Really?
there's not,
Honestly.
there's not really a whole lot. This whole movie's whitewashed. There's no white. There's no people of color
Even the
in
whole,
Gotham.
like, look, I don't want to be like, oh, enhance the stereotypes by making all the looters and the Occupy or all the revolution people, more mixed with black people or anything. But you look in that crowd, and the majority of them are white in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The quote unquote, lower class in this. Everybody's all
fucking
whitewashed.
football team. That was it.
The football team, yeah, because that was an
And they
actual football
killed
team. Yeah, that too. So yeah,
Oh,
not
yeah.
looking good in terms of. I mean, I'm just saying this would never happen these days. Like these days, if you're going to bring in Ra's al Ghul again, he's got to be an Arabic guy. You bring in Talia, it's
Yeah.
going to be somebody who's half Asian.
Fuck
You
yeah.
bring in Bane, it's going to be somebody Latino, and then like even now they're even casting what's typically white roles with other ethnicities, which
Yeah,
is why
Gordon.
Jeffrey Wright. Yeah, Jeffrey Wright is now Gordon. Zoe Kravitz.
Mark
is
Maron
Batwoman.
did a really good interview with what's his name? Damn it, Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
And they talk a bit about the Batman. Anyway, sorry.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to look
Oh
into that.
shit!
He's amazing.
I did
He's
not
amazing.
know that.
He's amazing.
I mean, I'm sure he doesn't really give anything away.
No,
given
no, he talks.
the
No, he
craziness.
talks a little bit about like the experience of shooting with the people he's working with, and he's just like, we're having a ball. It's a blast. It sucks that we had to pause, but it's fine. And he's a bit of an activist, so he's like, fantastic dude. Basquiat all the way was one of my most favorite films.
Nice.
Anyway, go ahead.
I mean, I'm imagining that's what he's going to say. It's not like he's going to be like, oh, man, it was miserable. Thank God for quarantine. I don't want to go back in and play Gordon again. So,
Yeah,
like,
it just made me
like,
think
yeah.
that Matt Reeves is like really injecting it with something. I mean, it's the hope, It's like this new blood and this.
it is interesting to cast Gordon as an African American in these days where, not to get super political of stuff, but in the current
Right.
climate, where
Yeah.
it's very much feels like in Us versus Them, very much feels like African Americans versus cops and
Yeah.
everything, and what it must feel like as somebody who's both.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're
Yeah.
going to explore that in it, but I'm sure there might be some
creates
aspect to it.
an interesting conflict. Sorry to cut you off. It creates an interesting conflict because so much of like that racial stuff that pops up in terms of with police and everything it's tough for people to be leaders, I think, who are African American, because you skirt the line of being considered like going with the oppressors or whatever.
Yeah,
So
the
I
Uncle
think there's
Tom
an
thing.
added dynamic to him being African American, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that could be
Yeah.
interesting, but we'll see how much they explore that. But yeah, we are maybe 15, 20 minutes into the movie, and
Hey,
It's
but we
fine
covered
with me. I could do this forever.
but we covered all the major characters. So next time when we come back, we will go and explore more of the plot points and how they tie into stuff like the Cult and The Dark Knight Returns and Nightfall and all those things. But for now, we're just gonna keep it. We're just gonna wrap this up here on the characters. But before we do, Wolfie, what is our score in terms of comics versus movie? I imagine this is a very tight race.
Yeah, we got 2 for comics and none for movie in this one. Does that sound
Wait,
correct?
we only did 2.
Wait.
Didn't we do Robin?
It's
So I
definitely
guess that would
none
be
for
3,
movie
yeah.
though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
none for movie. 3 for comics. My bad. Sorry, I didn't write it down. Yeah, you're right.
Oh man, all right, not looking good for the movie. All right.
Well, I think a lot. It's so interesting how this. I never really thought about it. I was just like, oh, that's just the weaker of the trilogy, but it does kind of like bring up a lot of interesting points and
Yeah.
and yeah,
And
it's kind of like there could you not have done just a little bit better?
I mean, seriously, he had the best at his disposal. Like this is like
Yeah.
the modern
Yeah.
Kubrick, the modern
Yeah.
Spielberg in some way, the modern whoever you want to talk about. Like that's the top
Yeah.
director here. He's gonna have his own Criterion Collection box sets if they still
Yeah.
make those in the future. It's this fucking Nolan here, and this is what we get. This is not great.
Yeah,
To
I
be
think
honest,
there's
I
a
haven't
lot.
s-
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I haven't seen a Nolan movie after this movie.
Really?
Not because
You need to
of a
jump on
personal.
it.
It's
Get
not because
back
of a
on it.
personal boycott. I've just never really been
Yeah.
super interested in everything else. And then after this one, I was kind of just like, okay. Like if I'm genuinely interested in the concept, then I'll check it
Yeah.
out. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll check out Tenet, but I don't know how much of me wanting to check out Tenet is because of seeing a Robert Pattinson movie before he becomes Batman. So
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I just was only really into it because he was connected to Batman, and then now he's not. I'm just like,
The good thing
I'll
about
catch it.
That's
good thing
a
about Dunkirk was that it
valuable-
was super simple. Dunkirk is super simple, and like
And it's
usually
got
his
the
plots are like
historical
overblown.
backing. Sorry.
His plot's so overblown most of the time, but Dunkirk was like
Yeah.
like back to basics storytelling, and I thought that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. So anyway, what were you saying, Wolfie?
Oh, but kind of going with, like I think we were just saying kind of the same thing at the same time. I think, Dunkirk had the historical kind of like quote unquote rule set, we'll say, like to work with, which made it more simple, and you could tell a story where there wasn't a whole lot of like machination in the writing and such. And Interstellar is fantastic, but it does I think has a very divisive ending, because you really got to either accept kind of what they're giving you, or a lot of what the movie builds up from is a little bit compromised by the ending. So, I'm basically saying, like, you're probably not at a loss for not watching some of the movies after this. Interstellar is great. It's one of my favorite movies, but the ending is very, like, it leads you to wonder why that movie was as long as it was in some sense.
It's a bit long. It's a bit harder to chew. Dunkirk is actually kind of like one of his lighter films in some way. It's weird.
Which I think is more of a refreshing. It seems to me that Dark Knight Rises was a bit of a fatigue, an exercise of post.
I just
fatigue,
don't think his heart was in it. I honestly don't think so, and I'll stand by that, even if he says otherwise, because it doesn't come across the love for it doesn't come across that he had. There was a clear interest in Batman and Batman Begins. There was a clear interest in Joker and his effect, and reimagining what you thought the Batman world was in The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight Rises just kind of felt obligatory and phoned in, where it was like, all right, I guess I'll just finish this thing off. What comics we got? All right, let's draw off of that. And then just that was it. And it's disappointing, and I kind of wish that he just said, you know what, that's it for me. Yeah. Like, I think that would be the ballsier move, to just be like, you know what, if I'm not really down for this emotionally afterwards, and sure, it might have risked the whole, like, oh, well, look at what happened when Burton turned it over to Schumacher, but as we've seen when we revisited those movies, there was a lot that Schumacher did when he came in that Burton didn't do. Like, that when you have another filmmaker come in, sometimes you get a different perspective, and it ends up helping in some ways. It might have hurt it in the long run, but there's actually some stuff in there that is underrated, that isn't really recognized. But anyway, like, I kind of prefer that maybe it would have been Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and then, someone else steps in and does a few more movies of Bale. Like, who knows? But it is what it is, for better or worse. You can find me as Ben Juan Ryder on Instagram. I also curate the SuperHouse, or not SuperHouse, the Superhero Stuff You Should Know, brought to you by SuperHouse. Instagram and Twitter. You can find us at Superhero Stuff Pod on both. We're going to be changing that soon. Nice. And then I'm going to be doing some shout outs across different social media accounts. So we've had followers across all, but I usually just do Instagram, but we've had some who are specific to certain platforms. One of them is a supporter named Ariel B, who we talk to a lot on there, and she's also definitely somebody who doesn't care for the whitewashing for Bane and Talia in this, so I thought I would dedicate this episode to her.
Nice.
Fight the power.
Yep. On YouTube, we've had some nice comments from a user named Shamrock Balls. Not lying, that's his name.
That's right. I've seen him.
Thank you very much, sir, or ma'am, but I'm pretty sure you're sir. And then
what gave it away?
As well as another user named John Wells. Thank you very much. And then on Instagram, we have Batfan Addict, which is another Batman-related podcast. So we could potentially do a crossover there. And another user named _Zalewski as well. So thank you very much for listening and supporting us. On to Andrew.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for that bat tutelage, Ben, once again.
The Bat Toots.
Bat Toots. And if you could please go to patreon.com/SuperHousePodcast and join the Shasta Army for just $1 a month. That's our $1 tier. And what you get for that is a shout out for now. And we're going to be adding more to our tiers soon. And then shout out to Kooky Noms, Matt Herring, and Elijah B. Please leave us a review in iTunes. And if it's possible, leave us a review in Spotify, because that's becoming a huge thing lately. And if you could just also take out your phone and open up your voice recorder app. In that app, record something like, I love superhero stuff you should know, or superhero stuff you should know was awesome, or something like that. And then click the share button and share that to the email superhousepodcast@gmail.com. that would be super. And then I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter. And please check us out on youtube.com/c/SuperHousePodcast, or just search for us there. We're everywhere. Thanks for everybody for joining us via the Facebook groups lately too. That's been a huge help. And I think that's it for me, signing off.
Ayo, I'm Wolfie Kruz on Instagram. Not a whole lot going on that pertains to the podcast, but if you'd like to see some of my photos, go check that shit out. I also run a group on Facebook called the Overly Critical Hyperanalytical Movie Club. Forthcoming podcast based on that, featuring superhero stuff you should know members. And that's about it. Come join the club. Come get in on the conversation. Thanks,
Nice.
Ben.
And this has been, again, you can find me on Instagram at BenJuanWriter. And that is it. Join us next time. Same bat time, same bat channel. Ben signing off.
This has been brought to you by the Superhouse Podcast Network.
If you like what you heard and you want to support the show or the Superhouse Podcast Network, go to our Patreon at patreon.com/SuperHousePodcast.